Squad, a relatively small title from an indie developer, has quietly become the best large-scale modern shooter on the market. And I'm honestly a little shocked we've ended up here. And before you rip me to pieces and stomp my skull into the dust, other game fans, let me show you how we got here. It's November 2021. The stage is set. People see a video of a guy driving a quad bike off a skyscraper roof into an enemy helicopter. They're ready. Battlefield 2042 is about to release. Turns out, the game has a few issues. One of the main ones being, it doesn't work. And even when it does, it's not even close to finished. Remember that skyscraper? Yeah, you can just smash into it, no problem. That quad bike? Yeah, it's not even in the game. That skyscraper roof? Yeah, it's actually covered in tanks and APCs that you can call in from the sky. A titan had fallen. Battlefield was dead. And as the Battlefield franchise sank to the bottom of the murky depths, survivors started clinging to anything that floats. World War III had a sudden rise in players, prompting the devs to dust off their keyboards and actually keep making the game. Modern combat shooter from 100 years ago Project Reality quietly grew in popularity, prompting server owners to wake up from their deep slumber and ban as many new players as possible. And a little game called Squad became a big game called Squad. All of a sudden, if you wanted to play a modern shooter with large-scale battles in 2022, your options were Squad, Project Reality, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, World War III, or Arma 3. Now, Project Reality looks like it was made at the same time Steam trains first left the factory, so it was unlikely to attract that fresh Battlefield audience. World War III barely worked, and the devs had pretty much walked away from the project altogether. Call of Duty was an option, but unfortunately, Battlefield players have a built-in die-hard hatred of Call of Duty and could never play the game on principle alone. And Arma 3 was way too serious to be picked up by a mainstream audience, and also relies on limited organised events to be playable. This leaves only one option, an arguably obscure realism shooter never meant for a mainstream audience. But the Squad devs had to work fast. They knew that the fact they were currently the only option would not hold players for long. Their game was in an okay place, but it needed to be in a great place. For most of 2021, the devs had been releasing nothing more than minor bug fix patches and hotfixes. Much like that bread I bought a month ago and forgot about, the game was getting a bit stale. A month before 2042 bit the dust, they released the map Anvil, a map that is still widely played today. In February the following year, the devs kick it up a notch. February 2022, overhaul of Squad visuals. Now your little indie game looks like this. Wow. April 2022. An entire new faction, the Australian Army, is added. Wow. May 2022. 3 new vehicles and a little thing called a Hell Cannon is added. If that doesn't keep you playing, nothing will. June 2022. Squad 3.0. It's a big one. The US Marine Corps is added. Amphibious vehicles are introduced. There's a new map. Squad's player base had gone from this to this. In that same amount of time, Battlefield 2042, a game being actively worked on by every game studio EA owned, had managed to add a scoreboard. Things looked bright, but there was a storm on the horizon. A bunch of budding young coders locked up in a basement for the last 5 years had just emerged, and they brought with them a little mod called Battlefield 3 Reality Mod. It was a modern large-scale shooter. It had a class system and was teamwork oriented. It had the added benefit of having Battlefield in the title. It went through a number of playtests. The feedback was good. It was played by a number of big-name content creators who thoroughly enjoyed and endorsed the game. A trailer was released. A lot of people watched it. Squad devs were quaking in their boots. The game goes live. It's a huge success. Every server is completely full, with thousands more trying to join. The dev team have to actively acquire new servers on the fly just to get more players in. Not a bad problem to have. Had Squad been toppled? Was their time up? Was it time for off-world industries to finally put their money where their mouth was and move off-world? Well, no. You see, Reality Mod looked good, but it had some issues. The game would crash. A lot. Like every round. And it didn't matter if you were playing on a toaster or NASA's supercomputer. It also lacked content. The only vehicles you'd find in the game were Humvees, and the available classes were limited. Also, the players in this game were below average, and your chances of communicating with anyone were slim. Within a few weeks, the servers went from looking like this to this. Squad had weathered the storm. But what's that in the distance? I don't believe it. An iceberg, and it looks more realistic than ever. Arma Reforger is announced. A fresh new Arma game, set in a modern combat environment with a whole new engine. A shining beacon of milsim hope from the team that practically built the milsim genre. Remember that general Arma jank that's kept you away from every Arma release because it just looks and feels too stupid to actually play? They might have just fixed that. Content creators piled on like a pack of wild dogs. Any competing realism shooter dev would be worried. But they didn't have to be. Turns out Bohemia Interactive was like all the cool kids at school. When the teacher looked at their homework, it turns out they'd done the bare minimum. Arma Reforger was nothing more than a hollow shell, designed to be a framework for modders to make an actual video game out of. And while it was a showcase of what the elusive Arma 4 would have to offer, Reforger itself did little more than fizzle out into nothing. To this day, Squad stands atop the smouldering remains of the modern shooters that once lay before it. It certainly has its issues, and I for one have my complaints about the way the game plays and the quality of teamwork and communication you can expect. But you can't deny that this once small indie shooter has withstood the test of time and stands triumphant in a genre that seems to be collapsing around it. But what do you think? Is Squad so bad you'd rather play 2042? Are you that one guy playing Arma Reforger? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like what you see, drop a like and subscribe. For every new subscriber, I'll donate one coffee to that one remaining Battlefield dev that didn't hand in their notice fast enough. Other than that, all the best and have a great day.